take a look at another challenge that we have sometimes when working with image sequences, particularly when rendered out of 3D programs. In fact, here is a sequence that was rendered, let's see, out of Carrara, or maybe I think I used Carrara here to do just sort of a short sequence where this some sort of a spaceship is flying and spinning around. I'm holding it in place, but I'm spinning it around the long axis so that maybe I can use it as a looping animation in front of some other background scene. So this was rendered as a PNG, which is a very common format used because it allows for the alpha channel to carry a transparency mask. In fact, if I open this in something like Ifront view, you can tell that it doesn't really have a background that's white or black. It's probably black actually, but the thing is it has a transparency mask, and in many image viewers, if you look under the information, you'll see that it has 32-bit per pixel. That means RGB, red, green, blue, for 8 bits each, and then on top of that another 8-bit for the alpha channel. And likewise, if we load this into Dogwaffle as a single image, let's go and open it and take this one here, for instance. When you load that in, it may show black. It may not show the alpha channel outline, but you can go to the selection and view that, turn the alpha on to see it. And sure enough, we have a selection mask here as shown by the marching ants. And so now if we load this into the brush as a custom brush, we do have the ability to do that as well. And let me take a different one, perhaps this one here, and load that as a custom brush and preview it, allow the PRV here to show it. In fact, I'm going to erase the background and disable the selection mask on that, clear the alpha, and show the full opacity on the brush image. So there you go. So we can see that, we can store it and use it in different ways. Perhaps add a little bit of rotation to that, change the size, make it bigger. There you go, and have a different view or version of that same original brush image. And it's got the transparency mask, so we can have a whole army of them there. But thing is a little bit different if we have a sequence that we want to load, right? I mean, we can load it as an animation, but that won't carry the alpha channel into it. So we could load here the whole sequence, and let's see, where's my presentation? There it is. It's one of those spaceships, spaceship 1. Here's the PNG sequence, right? So I could load, let's just grab a few of those and load this in as a sequence. And there it is, it's spinning around, but it doesn't have the alpha channel in that case. When we load it into the animation, it uses just the RGB channels. And so you can go and enable that, but it's showing just the whole frame flat selected. So when we load this into a brush, however, we want the alpha channel to stay with each frame image that we load. And there is a tedious way to do that, which is you start with the first image that I have just here, and then you go back to loading another brush. In fact, you might start with this one here, and let's do that, and then store it. Right? In fact, there's a shortcut to do that, double quotes, so that might speed it up a little bit. But we've got the first one here, and then we can go to the brush menu again and open the next one. If you remember which one the first one was, that one was 501. Let's go to 502, click open, and now you could go and store it by itself. So you have a second image, there's this one, and there's this one. But you can also, after having loaded this one, you can add it to this. You can add frame. And to really understand what's happening is what we just did is we're building a animated brush, or it's still a custom brush made of 2 images now. In fact, you can show the film strip of that, and the film strip right here shows that we have 2 images in it. Now in this view of the film strip, it does not reveal where the alpha channel is. So this transparency mask tells us good, we have a transparency mask, transparent background around it. But we can continue. We can go to open the third one and keep doing that, and then just add it to this, and we now have 3, and keep doing that. But that's really tedious. You don't want to do that over 200, 300, 400 frames. And then if you take the wrong one, if you click one off, you will have, you will have created a sequence that's not the one you want to use. I mean, you can paint with it, but you see there's a glitch in it. So what we need is the ability to load a image sequence straight into the animator brush, and we do have that capability right there. So what I'll do is I'll start here with this and show you that there is still yet another challenge to go through, and that's to when we go to the animator brush, right, from the brush menu, select animator brush, you can go and load a sequence. You can also load an AVI into the brush. Now the AVI will not have an alpha channel in most cases, and even if it did, we will not load it with the alpha channel. But what you do have is the ability to load a sequence. So let's focus on that. Loading a sequence, what we can do, unfortunately right now we can only load BMP and Targa. So we have a sequence of PNG files, and we can't load it because this only takes BMP or Targa. Not a problem really. What we can do is convert it. So let's go to the file and batch process. This one has an option that converts to a number of formats and keeps the alpha channel if it finds that there is an alpha channel or a layer there. There is also a conversion capability here on the general file converter, but that one I would stay away from because it will not keep the alpha channel. If you look under the batch browser, there are some options there to convert. There it is. And when you do the batch convert with that, it will, well, first of all, you will actually have to select a sequence, and so I'm not quite ready to do that. But having tried that, what you'll see is that it actually focuses on just the RGB values. So this is not the way to go for keeping the alpha channel there too. However, this one will work. So you can use the batch process. And the batch process is actually powered by ImageMagick, and it's included with the installation of PD Howler. So what you'll do is you'll follow the, find your presentation there somewhere. Find it here. No, it's not this one here. It's this one. Find, where's my spaceship? Why is it always going away? There it is. Okay, so I have a PNG sequence, and I can go and select which ones of these images I want to select. And then I also indicate what format I want to save it in. Now you could load a BMP or a Targa from the image sequence loader. I'm going to go with Targa because that one works. In the case of the BMP, it does keep the alpha, but it inverts. It shows it inverted, so that means it's not a transparency on the background; it's an opacity, and you'll end up having the whole a hole inside the outline of the background. So with Targa, however, that works, and you can keep, it will use the same folder by default. I would recommend actually loading it into a different folder. You see right now I have a PNG sequence as the folder, and what I'll do is I'll say let's use a destination folder that's different. Let's go browse to that and specify where exactly we want it. I would just give it a parallel folder to where we already are. So if we go here, Spaceship 1, there it is. Let's go open that, and here's the PNG sequence. Well, let's select Spaceship 1 and then create a new folder in there and call that TGA sequence, right, Targa sequence. So we have the Targa sequence selected. Let's go and OK that. And then at that point I would select the entire image sequence, and that goes all the way down, scroll right down here to select, highlight all of these PNG files. And all we'll do, we don't need to apply any functions. I mean, there's plenty of functions you could add to that, all sorts of blur or rotation, or a lot of filters here, edge detection and so on. So that can be very powerful too, and important to know that we have that ability here enabled through ImageMagick. But what you want to do is really not, you don't need to do that. What you want to do is keep the images as they are and simply select Targa as the target and then click process. And so now what it's doing is it's doing this batch processing, saving all of the images after they've been converted to TGA into the new TGA sequence folder. And so that's the trick that you will want to learn in order to convert your PNG images. For instance, if you use Carrara or Poser or some other 3D program and you've saved an animation into a PNG sequence, and there is a transparency mask on each of them that you want to keep. So when you do that, you now have the ability to load the sequence into the brush as an animated brush, load the sequence, select Targa as the target, go to the select folder, dialog right there, and select where you have your Targa sequence now. And let's see if we can find it down there, spaceship 1. There it is, TGA sequence. And it will take all of the files there. So in this brush loader, when you select BMP or Targa, you can select one of those, but it's not going to be just you loading that. It's going to load the entire sequence, right? So it doesn't. I don't think it actually matters whether you highlight one of those. Anyway, let's go click load, and what you see is that it's now loading each of these frames one by one into a ever-growing animated brush. And in fact, you can see it here if you keep the cursor over, you can see it there. And the animation we have in the background, you can replace now with something else. Just before that, perhaps I would go and store the brush that we just loaded, store and manage it. You can see there is indeed a spaceship there with the transparent background loaded from that sequence. We can show the film strip, and this may take a little while depending on how many of these frames you have, but you can scroll through that and you can see them all. And let's go hide the film strip. So now we go and load something else in the background. You know, that could be, for instance, an animation. Let's load my Saturn animation. I have a animation of Saturn here somewhere. Let's go up to AVI. Let's find there. Approaching Saturn. Not by bicycle, there you go. Let's lose this one here. And so this one has 146 images, and what we want to do is load this and have basically the spaceship fly across that. Perhaps a little bit more rotation, so a smaller step size on the distance here. Let's go perhaps just one, and that way we have the entire sequence go like that. Now we'll want that across the entire animation that's in the background there, right? So you'll want to hold the Alt key down if you want to paint this manually. There you go, I just did that. And so now we have this sequence here. And you can see the animation is a little bit wobbly. It's not a perfect animation there. But there is another approach that you could use for that, and instead of manually painting it from left to right, I'm going to load this right there again, and now use the brush keyframer. And so with the brush keyframer, you will see the background animation, but you'll also see your brush that you currently have if it's a custom brush. And that custom brush is an animated custom brush that we just loaded from the sequence, from the Targa sequence that we previously converted from the PNG to Targa. And now as we scrub through that, you can see indeed that we are grabbing, we are flying through the frame sequence. We're scrubbing through the frame sequence that we have with the Saturn background, but we're also animating through the frames that are in the brush, the custom brush. And so that itself can be keyframed too. You might want to, for instance, rotate it a tilt little down here, perhaps make it a little bit bigger first, and on entry perhaps have it disappear. You know, it's gonna cloak or something like that, or decloak. So initially, let's give it a keyframe right there, and then here will be fully visible. So let's set the opacity like this. Let's move it in here. Let's bring it perhaps back to 0 or something like that, and have the size and the position set to that. Let's keyframe it there. Now let's go around here a little bit. Rotate like so, keyframe that. Let's go here a little bit to the left, and now here we might want to rotate again a little bit more. In fact, we might even lose some distance and come back closer, and keyframe that. And then here we'll speed up and perhaps bring, start to move forward into the scene like so, and go all the way to infinity back there. Let's make it go really small and keyframe that. So now we have a sequence that looks like this, right? Going in and so on. And that's exactly what we want to use these custom animator brushes for, with the transparency in the brush, so that we can actually use this. You know, I don't care if that's a poser walk sequence, human figure walking, or whether it's a spaceship flying. In all cases, you'll have some opaque parts, and then you have a transparent background around it. And so now we just need to render that, and that completes this little demo. Thanks for watching.